Hello and welcome to the Blessings in the Streets podcast. I am your host, Joseph B. Roberts, and in studio with me today is a young lady that I had the pleasure of meeting about a year and a half ago, I would say. She's one of my neighbors, and we had an opportunity to meet, and she's a mom, she's a wife. Most importantly, she's a woman of God, and she's taken out some time from a very busy schedule to hang out with us for a little while to share a little bit about her journey, her story, with the hopes of inspiring and encouraging and uplifting others, particularly as it comes to dealing with, how to overcome adversity and challenging times in life. So it is my privilege and honor to have her on the show with us today. I'm excited, and I know she's a blessing to us all tuning in. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my privilege and honor to introduce to you Miss Jene Butler. Jene, thank you so much for being with us on the show.
Well, thank you for the warm welcome and thank you for inviting me. I've been looking forward to this, very excited. So just a little bit about myself. My name is Jene Butler. I'm a nurse practitioner by trade. About, maybe 2019-ish. I ran for city council in our city. First time doing anything in politics. Didn't have enough sense to actually be afraid or have any fear. But I'm now on my second term. I enjoy it a lot. I'm on the board of directors for the Chamber of Commerce in our city and also a board member for North Texas 911. So lots of fun things. I go to one community church in Plano and just enjoy spending time with my husband and two kids.
That is awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that little snippet about yourself. And like I said, to my listeners, you're going to be in for a treat. She's a woman of many talents, many activities and involvement. Like I said, with the kids, are involved in a lot of great stuff, and with the sports and everything. And just a beautiful family to meet. And again, I'm excited as well. Been looking forward to this time together to learn a little bit more about you and your story. So with that said, let's go ahead and jump right in. We won't hold anybody in anticipation any longer. So when it comes to our stories, our journeys in life,
Mhm.
I truly do believe that you really can't capture the full essence of what that story is all about without first beginning to reflect back on where it all starts. And so that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to kind of take it back a little bit. And I'm going to would please share with us, what was it like for you growing up? As you reflect on that, fond memories that you have about coming up, as well as if there was any particular challenges that, may have come across your path and growing up, please share that as well. Just kind of give us that foundational basis of, where does the Jene Butler story begin, and what was it like for you in those beginning times as a kid coming up?
Well, I'm from Fort Worth, and I have, four sisters that I grew up with. And I actually went to Catholic school when I was younger. And I loved that school. I think that was probably the best learning experience I ever could have had. Um, just the foundation that we had, not just in church, but just the values that they taught us. Back then, your teachers, you could hop in the car with them and they could take you places. I remember my principal taking me to participate, oh gosh, in the spelling bee of all places. But it was just a very unique, fulfilling experience. I kind of wish my kids had experienced what I experienced. They taught us not only just the didactic part, but about having compassion and having service, to others. So we used to volunteer even when I was in school. I think probably in the sixth grade, we started volunteering at a daycare. So that was part of our learning experience. So when people are like, well, how did you get into volunteering or donating your time and doing different projects? I'm like, that's just always been ingrained in me just because of the education that I had. My grandmother was the person that I stayed with that watched me up until I started school. So I was the last grandchild that she kept, and very, very close to her. I always say if I ever get dementia, I want to go back to the times of watching her sitting on the side of the bed, watching me just run around the backyard, and just having the active imagination that I had, just the routines that we had. I think that her love that she had for me is what I credit for me being the parent that I am. As far as my parents go, my mom and my father divorced when I was 2. So I actually have no memory of my dad at all. And so the next time that the next time that I really saw him was actually when he passed away when I was a senior in high school. So I try to be a person that doesn't have a lot of regrets. I tend to say things that most people are like, you probably should not say that, but I didn't get a chance to ask him the questions that I wanted to ask him because I was always like, I'll do that when I'm old enough, to go and see him myself. Not that he lived that far from me, and then he also had 2 other children. So 3. So we didn't all grow up together. It wasn't until probably about a year or 2 ago that we all finally connected as adults. So I think that's important to learn how to move past things, and sometimes not hold on to the hurt, and, sometimes the hurt of others. So, but let's
Wow.
see, college life. Another fun fact, I was actually an independent student. So I tell my kids all the time, like, you guys, I'm not going to say they have it easy, but they have it easy. And I think that was probably one of the moments in life where I was like, you got to sink or you got to swim. You got to decide which one you're going to do. And, that was kind of a rough transitional period there because, like I said, my father had passed away that I really didn't know. So it's hard to kind of navigate grief for someone you really don't know. I don't know if I really had grief, but my grandmother also passed away about 2 weeks before I went to college. And that was probably the first person I'd ever had in my life close to me pass away. So it was a lot of transition, but, persistence and grit.
That's that's a very powerful upbringing on so many levels. As I'm processing all of this, of course, I can relate to the Catholic school experience.
Mm-hmm.
There were some years that I had early on in life where I was in Catholic school at an early age, and so as you stated, just some of the principles that are instilled in you, your overall behavior, your mindset. You get a lot of that in going to, having that Catholic school background, that education coming up as a kid. And like I said, it was different times back then, of
Mm-hmm.
course. Like you said, a little bit more personable relationship between, teachers and students. It was like, your teachers were almost like an extended part of your family in terms of like parenting, especially in a
Yes.
Catholic school.
Mm-hmm.
They could discipline you.
Mm-hmm.
Just like you might get disciplined at home. I've even shared a couple of those stories, even with my own daughter, and she's looked at me crazy. I'm like, yeah, I've
Mm-hmm.
seen that happen,
Yeah.
in school, and even when I think about my mom coming up Catholic school as well. So, I can totally relate to that. And then, pointing out, I should say, about the absence of your dad, with your parents
Mm-hmm.
divorcing at such an early age. I also can relate to that, as I'm sure many of our listeners can, when you don't have that parent around, and like you said, you have so many questions, so many things that you want to ask, and trying to figure out what's the right timing for that. And then all of a sudden, unfortunately for some of us, for yourself, and it even happened with me, when that time happens, when that parent passes,
Mhm.
And if it's a parent that wasn't around you growing up, like my dad, he didn't grow up in the home with me. I mean, I did have contact
Mhm.
with him.
Right.
It wasn't that I didn't have any kind of relationship with him, despite him not being in the home with us growing up. But
Mhm.
I still recall, as you shared, I still recall that moment that when the passing happens, you're it what the grief is like. It's like, am I
Mhm.
really grieving? Or it's kind of like a borderline between grief and anger.
Yeah.
And then it's like, and then it even transitions into a disappointment because you start reflecting on like
Mhm.
all the stuff that you wish or you thought we could have done, and
Right.
just the finality of it all, knowing that now if I wanted it to happen, it's never going to happen
Right.
because that he's now gone.
Mhm.
So it's a weird feeling. So I totally identify with that. And of course, I love the fact that, you talked about your grandmother. I too can relate to that as well. Close bond with my grandmother. We were just tight as tight can be, and just
Mhm.
the influence and the impact of that, of such a person in your life. And, so it's, again, to have those bonds, to have that family community around you is so important and so key in that. I guess, when early on, when you're younger, you don't really realize the significance of it until you start getting up in
Right.
age and you reflect back and you're like, wow, that was important. That was like a big deal. And you even
Mhm.
start to notice like certain things that you do, particularly the positive things that you do, whether it's in parenting or just your mindset about life in general, how much you drew from people like that grandmother, or
Right.
or other significant figures in your life that just played those roles, that dropped those nuggets upon you, again, without even realizing that it was happening, but it manifests itself as the years go on. And then the last thing I would say is, trying to teach those lessons, to our own children. As you
Mhm.
said, it's like we're not trying to say that they have it easy, but in
Yeah,
comparison
but
to what life was like for us growing up, they got it
Mhm.
pretty easy.
Mhm.
And it's something as a parent, like when you come from a lifestyle, not to say that you have anything coming up, but when you come from an upbringing where it was a little bit more challenging, you had to work harder at getting things. It didn't all come easy at it. Come easy to you. There's a natural tendency that when you become a parent, you want to make life,
Yes.
comfortable, and I want to
Mhm.
give you all the things I didn't have. And in the spirit of us doing that, sometimes the things that we supposedly are trying to withhold from them are the very
Mhm.
they also need, along with all the stuff,
Right.
junk, and things that we buy them. You know,
Yes.
because as you stated, when the real life kicks in, and you're
Mhm.
out here on your own, as you stated, you got to sink or swim. That kind of has to be your mindset, and you just can't expect that everything is just gonna comfortably and easily just lay down before you, and just somebody's
Right.
gonna give stuff to you. You're gonna have to make your mark and earn it and work hard at it, and
Mhm.
expect opposition from time to time and challenges. And you're gonna have to be strong and be able to withstand that and know how to power through it. So, all great points that you talk about in your upbringing, and it's so important. And again, you can't help but to reflect and think back on that and how much that plays a role in our journey and our story, and which is the essence and the beauty about what we're talking about tonight. Is just that's why I like to have this moment to kind of start where those beginnings, are birthed from, because it really tells so much to where you are today versus how it all began to come together and formulate itself to you becoming, in your case, becoming the woman that you are, the mother that you are, the wife that you are. All those things, it all matters, and it all, it's all a part of that process, all a part of that journey. So with that said, I'd like to go a little bit further into your story.
Okay.
You know, One of the things, as we do, go through our childhood, get into adulthood, start living life, start experiencing those grown up moments. Uh, the reality is that, along the way, we're going to face some challenges, we're going to face some adversities, but every now and then we get hit with something that's a little bit, heavier, a little bit more
Mhm.
intense than what we're accustomed to maybe dealing with on a day to day basis. So much so that we might encounter situations that, we'll find ourselves like, how am I going to get out of this? This is a bit
Mhm.
overwhelming. This is a bit much. This is not something that I can, swipe my card and make go. This is not something that I can just make a quick phone call and it just disappears. I'm facing it. It's upon me, and I don't know how I'm going to get from up under it. So I would like to ask you, if you would, tell us about a time where you felt you were in such a situation where it seemed like it was no way out. You didn't know how you were going to
Hmm.
work through this. It might have seemed even impossible to overcome. Obviously, you're here today. And
Yeah.
so we can only trust that God made a way to navigate you through it. But if you would kind of share that, kind of walk us through what it was that particular moment was for you, and what was ultimately that turning point where you began to sort of see the light at the end of the tunnel, if you will, as you were coming up out of that particular storm in your life.
That would have to be when my grandmother passed, right before I went off to college. It's probably about 2 weeks before I left. And the last day that I spent with her in hospice, our thing used to be watching Young and the Restless together. And I remember going and seeing her. I was telling her, what day it was, what it looked like outside. And I started to tell her about our stories, tell her what was
Mhm.
going on with Victor and Ashley and Nikki. So I'm running it all down. And she didn't say anything. She was pretty much unconscious at that point. I think my cousins and my mom and my other sister saw her the day before, and they said she was up and actually talking. And then a few days later, I was actually going to go see her that day. She passed away. So it was the guilt of not seeing her again. Why couldn't I have seen her when she was actually lucid and could talk? Did she know I was there? Um, did she know how much I loved her, how much she meant to me? And then you start thinking about like the times that I should have picked up the phone and called her, but I'm being a teenager and wanting to do teenager things. So get all that guilt, So I think that I carried that around for a long time. And when I went off to college, I was in deep grief, maybe even I'd say depression. I really didn't know what that was at the time because I'd never experienced it before. But all I know, I don't really remember much from my first semester in college. I just remember going to class and going back to my room, getting in the bed, crying. Like I went through the motions of what you're supposed to do.
Mhm.
But I didn't hang out with people. I didn't feel like being social. I was surprised I made good grades that semester because everything was kind of a blur. And when I was in her hospital room the last time there, I was like taking little things that I don't know. I took some lip balm that she had. I took this little doll that I had given her years ago when she'd been in the hospital before. And I was going back to my dorm room and I was taking the stairs up to my room. And I was rummaging around in my backpack because I always have been a fanatic about chapstick. And I pulled something out that felt like my chapstick and I put it on my lips. And then I stopped on the stairs because my lips just started tingling. And I'm like, well, what in the world did I put on my lips? It's supposed to be Carmex in here. And I looked down and it was her lip balm that she'd had in the hospice that I had picked up and I put on my lips. And I just, heard a voice that just said, you're going to be okay. You're going to be okay. And so I went to my dorm room. I rolled over in bed, faced the wall, cried myself to sleep. But the next day, I did wake up feeling like it would be a better day. Um, I think I did try grief counseling or counseling the school counselor that they had there, but I'm like, you just don't understand the bond that we had. You don't understand what she meant to me. And so, I wrote her a letter. Um, just everything that I could think of, everything that I wanted to say. Because I remember the first night I got to college and they dropped me off, I picked up the phone to call her. And I was like, dang, I can't even call her. So I think that that helped, and of course you're just like, God, why? All the things, why her? I just never thought of her not being there. No, it's not like she didn't live a great life. She lived into her 80s, but it took a lot to really, get through that. And, I think we started like going to a Bible study at school. We started studying the book of Revelations. And, so I think that helped, being more social. And, then at that time, trying to immerse myself more in the word at that point.
Wow. Well, that's definitely a very interesting take, like you said, and very real. I mean, like you said, it's just something unique about when you lose a loved one that's close to you like that. I mean, we talked about
Mm-hmm.
earlier losing someone in your dad who, yes, he was my dad, but I didn't really have that relationship with him and what that felt like. But then you had somebody who was there. They were that was my ride or die, my grandmother, and she loved on me. She thought the world of me, and then now she's gone.
Mm-hmm.
And just like you said, to process all of that, it can be very overwhelming and can just take you in a place mentally, emotionally, that again is just different than traditional hurt feelings or sadness. It's
Right.
like it cuts deep because you feel like there's a piece that's missing
Mm-hmm.
from you when something like that takes place. And so but the beautiful thing is, I believe this, and I think we can count this towards our faith in God, is that I believe that when you have special people like life, special loved ones, and they pass away, um, God has a way of, I guess, allowing you some comfort, if you will, some peace, if you will, by
Mm-hmm.
making a connection between you and that loved one to let you know, one, that you're going to be all right. But I think more importantly, letting you know that they're all right. And I think
Yeah.
in knowing that they're all right makes you feel better about what is otherwise a sad situation because
Mm-hmm.
I don't get to see them, I don't get to talk to them.
Right.
And I think you also made a good point about when you talked about you felt a certain level of guilt, if you will. You kind of thought about like, maybe I should have called more, maybe I should have, spent more time. And I don't think that you
Mm-hmm.
didn't do that. Like you said, you're a teenager, you kind of,
Right.
life happens, you kind of getting caught up in teenage things, and
Mm-hmm.
we do that kind of stuff. So I don't think any time that you didn't spend, I don't believe it was I wasn't spending this time because I had a beef with my grandmother, or
Right.
I didn't want to be around it. It was just I was just in my teenage life zone at that moment, and
Mm-hmm.
grandma was over there. I loved her. I enjoyed being around her. But as you get older, you're more things that become attractive to you or interesting to you that you
Right.
get connected with and involved with. So it's natural for you to feel that way. I will say one thing. When you said one of the things that you wondered was that in that last moment you're talking to her and she's really not conscious. You're thinking, I wonder if she hears me. I wonder if she knows how much I love her and all of those things. And that was one of the things that I learned when my stepdad was battling lung cancer and he was in his
Mm-hmm.
final stages. I still remember the hospice nurse, when she came by and she was trying to explain to us what he was experiencing. And I remember this so much, shared it with other people who've gone
Mm-hmm.
through similar situations, is that she said, one of the last things that goes is a person's hearing. And that's why it's so important, particularly in those final moments where they can't talk to you, they're not opening their eyes or whatever, why it's so important for you to speak positive, loving,
Mm-hmm.
have that kind of conversation in their presence. Don't be amongst family and everything, fussing and fighting or
Right.
doing crying around them. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
or how some of us do. We kind of without even realizing it, we can be
Mm-hmm.
insensitive. We you know tell tell such and such I said hi when you get to heaven.
Mhm.
Tell, all
Yeah.
that. And they're
I'm
sitting there
not
not
ready
able to
yet.
talk to you. I'm like, I ain't gone yet. You already told
Right.
me, you already put their request on who to check in on and who to say hi to,
Right.
and it's like, but I think it means so much
Mhm.
to those individuals who are in those final moments, because a lot of times, and I even would say this even to my stepdad, a lot of times, you know, those individuals are holding on
Yeah.
intentionally because they want to make sure that the people that they love the most, that you're going to be okay. That
Right.
it's like their way of signaling to you, like, I'm gonna hold
Mhm.
on, I'm gonna keep fighting with every bit of
Mhm.
energy that I have left in my body. I'm on my last legs, but I'm trying to stay around long enough just so that I can hear
Mhm.
that you're okay. And
Yeah.
or to hear from you to say to me, it's okay for you to go now. I'll be all
Mhm.
right. They want that comfort, and then I can now pass peacefully because I feel like we had our last conversation, and I know that you're all right. And like I said, you also can have an opportunity to know that I'm all right, whether it happens before they pass or even after the fact, because I had a similar situation, kind of like with, not necessarily with the chapstick, but I had a scenario happen with me in regard to my grandmother, that when that happened, it changed my whole perspective. It was a
Mhm.
turning point, I should say, about my grieving for her. It was like I
Yeah.
was I was comforted.
Mhm.
It was like her visiting me for that one last time to
Yeah.
let me know I'm all right. Don't worry
Mhm.
about it. We still good. I'm
Yeah.
okay. You go ahead and live life. You do all the things that I know I always knew you would do, successes and, happiness, all of that kind. Those are the feelings and emotions. And I think you had probably had a similar experience, even in just something as
Mhm.
simple as putting her chapstick on your lips and getting that tingling feeling and triggering those thoughts. And you even spoke to how it seemed like it would begin a starting point in you beginning to be more into the word of God, and just kind of starting,
Mhm.
even kicking off that journey. So little, what seems to be like little moments oftentimes are big moments, and they
Right.
trigger pathways that you're not making the connection. But even as we're sitting here talking, it's like these things have to happen, even if they feel, maybe a bit painful in the time that we're going through them. It's all a part of that journey. It's all a part of our development. It's all a part of God's plan for us to experience what we experience, because what lies ahead in terms of what ultimately is your purpose in life, this allows you to be able to come alongside people, whether it's you're coming alongside, not just so much coming alongside people, in a church setting or anything like that, but just in a place. I mean, and you correct me if I'm wrong, you deal with in your medical practice, you deal with like
Mhm.
family, yeah, like family medical work, correct?
Yes.
So if
Mhm.
that's so, who better, not just for your skills medically speaking, but in your heart, in your compassion,
Mhm.
to be able to come alongside people that are ailing, dealing with illnesses, dealing with situations. Just your presence, your aura, the things that your grandmother instilled in you, and your upbringing allows you to be more effective when connecting with people who come to you, again, that are sick and seeking healing,
Mhm.
seeking your expertise to help them. And they don't need you to just be book smart. They need you to be compassionate. They need you to be
Right.
empathetic. All of those things play a part in you being that person. So I look forward to going to see my doctor, because she
Mhm.
makes that opportunity, that moment, she makes me feel comfortable versus me feeling intimidated, versus me feeling scared to come, versus me feeling, like I can't open up to her and say, this is what I'm feeling. This is what hurts. This is what's
Mhm.
bothering me, because I feel like you'll take that and you'll genuinely and authentically try to help me to improve, my pathway and getting better in whatever it is that's going on with me. So those things matter so much. And so, that's why I have great appreciation for your story that you're sharing with this, with that bond with your grandmother. And I'm just piecing it all together just as I'm learning more about you, because I think all of those things are connecting, making you be who you are. And passing that on, of course, onto your children, and that you're
Right.
going to see signs of that in them if you're not already seeing. I've seen you speak. In fact, I've seen you speak about your kids in particular. I remember seeing something not too far back. You spoke about, particularly about your
Mhm.
son,
Mhm.
and how he's embracing it even at an early age. I can
Yes.
see his spiritual growth,
Mhm.
coming upon him at such a young age. Accident. That's not an
Right.
accident. The seeds were being planted in you, and you're passing that on through your children. You're positioning them to be, able to approach life the same way as you are. If not, as parents, we hope that they even do it
Mm-hmm.
better than what we did.
Right.
So kudos to you for that. And but again, that's not an accident. It's all pieces of the
Mm-hmm.
puzzle that are coming together that's making that purpose happen as to why you do what you do and how you are the way. Wow. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful sharing of that story, and I appreciate you and your transparency and sharing that and how you felt, because many of us, have had that pain of losing that loved one, and it's never an easy one. So
Right.
I do definitely appreciate you sharing that.
And if I can
Um,
just say one last thing about,
Absolutely.
my father, not leaving things unsaid. You know, I didn't. My parents had, a pretty contentious divorce, and I remember looking my dad up in the phone book because I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna call. I'm gonna call him." And I call, and I think it was him that picked up, and I froze, because I was like, "Oh God, what do I say?" Then all the thoughts start racing. Then, like, well, what if he doesn't want to hear from me? Oh, my mom's gonna be upset if she finds out. And I hung up the phone, and then I, really just kind of pushed it far, far back in my mind. Um, and one of my uncles, used to play dominoes or cards or something with him. My uncle Chuck, and he told me one time, he's like, "Hey, I play, cards with your dad." He's like, "I'm going to take you to see him." And so I was like, okay, so I got excited. I was in high school at this point. And so I was like, okay, this is exciting. And so, we were planning it out. And he's like, okay, so, I'm going to pick you up on this day and then I'm going to take you, to see him. And so I was like, okay. The day before he was supposed to do it, he tells me, he's like, "Hey, I'm not going to be able to take you." And so I just said, okay. And then I guess what bothers me is that I never asked why. I was like, you make up your own assumptions in your head. Well, maybe he didn't want to see me. Um, well, who would it upset if I did? So, I think it's important for people to just don't leave things unsaid. If you have questions, if there's something you want to know, even if it's something you may not want to hear, don't live with the regret of not having at least tried.
I totally agree with that. You know, I- there's a way for you to, like you said, have unanswered questions answered. Do it, but do it and doing it in a respectful way.
Hmm.
But at the same time, as you said, who I would rather know and it not be what I wanted to hear versus not know and
Right.
and like you said, have regrets. I wish I would have asked. I wish I would have done this. I
Hmm.
wish, because kind of going back to what you talked about, even as you reflected on your grandmother earlier, so many people allow loved ones, whether it's people that they're close to or people that they've gotten some type of argument with, they don't resolve, they don't talk, they don't
Hmm.
have those conversations, and then something happens like
Right.
a death, and then
Hmm.
you're sitting there, oh, I wish we would have had a chance to work this thing
Right.
out. I wish we would have resolved our differences, and I wish we would have spent more time, that I didn't allow the stuff and things in life to get to consume me so much to where I didn't spend the time with my mom or my dad or my grandparents
Hmm.
or my kids. I wish, and you can't get that back. Once they're gone, they're gone. And so many people, I think we all at times can, get in our comfort zones of life to where we lose perspective as to how important life is, how valuable it is,
Right.
and how short it is,
It is.
in an instance.
Hmm.
And, just, like right now, I mean, here we are talking, and in a couple of days, I'll be, my wife and I will be attending a funeral for one of our members at our church. And,
Mhm.
and it's like, she wasn't an older person at all.
Mhm.
And it was just a few years ago that she was just healthy and fine, and everything was great. Beautiful
Right.
marriage, beautiful kids, everything, life is great. And then now she's gone. And you don't realize again how precious life is. And so you to cherish those moments, to have those conversations, to resolve your differences. It's so critical that we embrace that. And just because just because you address certain situations that go on, especially if they're contentious type of things or whatever, it doesn't mean that that means that you excuse or accept any wrong that might have been passed on.
Right.
But
That's
but it,
true.
but it bring there's a peace that comes along with it. And really the best word that you can speak to those kind of situations would be, the word of forgiveness. Sometimes
Right.
we have to forgive.
Mhm.
I think even in your case with your dad, even though you didn't specifically state it, there had to be a point where you had to resolve within yourself that, I forgive the fact that you weren't actively present in my life. I don't
Mhm.
like it, that you weren't. I don't excuse it, but because at the end of the day, if you don't forgive, then that hurts you. You walk around carrying
Right.
that poison inside of you
Mhm.
that somehow holding it in you is harming the other person. You can't
Right.
you can't do that. And so
Mhm.
there has to be a release of that. And so forgiveness is huge. It's important to like you said, to talk that stuff through, whatever the situation is,
Right.
so that you don't, burden yourself down mentally and emotionally, bringing on
Mhm.
sicknesses and ailments to yourself just
Right.
because you just are holding all of that stuff in.
Mhm.
And again, you're only hurting you when you do
That
that.
is true.
So, it's so valuable for us to have, like you said, these conversations, and that includes the tough ones. Sometimes,
Mhm.
and
That
again, you can
does,
have tough,
definitely.
right. And I just want to reemphasize, you can have tough conversations and be respectful at the same
Right.
time. We can end that conversation agreeing to disagree, but at least we
Mhm.
got it out. At least I know where
Right.
you stand. You know where I
Mhm.
stand. We're good. If we pass each other on the street, we can still be cordial. Like,
Right.
hello. Uh,
Mhm.
okay, nice to see you. And I go my way and you go
That's
your way.
right.
We can
Mhm.
be cool like that.
Right.
That relationship can still exist, even though
Mhm.
we may not be tight like that,
Right.
but we can be respectful, we can be cordial.
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, you have your piece, that person has their piece, and we can live and do our thing, whatever that is. So it's really good that you spoke. And one other thing I meant to ask you
Mhm.
earlier, just out of curiosity, because I've
Yeah.
had that experience as well.
Mhm.
You shared about your dad having, other kids,
Mhm.
and you eventually, of course, which technically they would make them your siblings, your half
Right.
siblings.
Yes.
When you had an opportunity to finally meet them, what was that encounter like, and what is the relationship like today, if in fact there is one?
Well, there is. So I will say, um, probably my brother had reached out to me a few years ago. I wasn't ready at that point. And it was kind of that, well, I've gone all this time without knowing you. Like, I really don't need to know you now. Like, what value does that add to me? I'm fine. I don't need. And then it was probably around the pandemic. And, I watch a lot of genealogy shows and knowing where you come from. And I'm like, wow, I really don't know much about where I come from, especially on my dad's side. So, I started thinking, I'm like, maybe I should reach out and maybe I should, then it's like, what do you say? I don't know what to say. And my older sister, I have two older sisters. So they are 10 and 8 years older than I am. They have more memories of, my dad and his side of the family than I do. So, and they have varying views on that. So it just so happened that I was talking to Aaron because I was telling, when I was really talking to you and your wife at Adinka in Aaron's house.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So in Adinka, that is her bonus son. And
Mm-hmm.
I was telling her, I was like, it is so beautiful how, you're throwing this party for your bonus son, just how you guys have this seamless, you know, blended family. And it's just a beautiful thing. And I talked to her, I was like, I wonder if I should, reach out to my brother and sister and other sisters. And, she was like, you should do that. And so we talked about it, and I was like, yeah, you're right. And then one day I was talking to Aaron, and we were talking about it, and he was just like, I just don't know what I would do without, the relationship I have with my brothers and how close they are. So I was like, it's time to, bury that hatchet. And really, what am I holding on to? That, they haven't really done anything. We were all just kind of casualties of this situation. So we met in Arlington at Papados, and we had a great time. So we have stayed in touch. We text. We have our little sibling chat group, and it's been great. At first, it's like, oh, this is kind of weird trying to get to know people when we're as old as we are. But I really enjoy them. And, I try not to look back and be like, oh, so much time was wasted. And what would it have been like if we'd actually, have grown up and, had a relationship. But I'm excited, and happy to have a relationship with them now.
That's great. That's great. And like I said, I asked that because I have a similar situation.
Hmm.
My dad had children, through his marriage.
Hmm.
And so, I can, and I knew all of them, at a very early age. However,
Hmm.
at that time, there was really only one of my siblings, which is my oldest half sister, that actually made me feel welcomed in their presence.
Yeah.
The other ones, I might get a high out of them, and
Hmm.
that was about it. And she was the one
Yeah.
who, actively stayed in contact with me, communicate anytime I would see her, and that transitioned into adulthood. So, I mean, she was at my, college graduation and my grad school
Hmm.
graduation. She was at my wedding. She was at my, she came to my house for the holiday before. She, all the things that you would
Yeah.
expect from a sibling. And then, of course, I
Hmm.
later found out about two other sisters from another situation,
Hmm.
and we're cool with each other as well. But sometimes I think back, as you stated,
Yeah.
um, you know, the other ones,
Hmm.
like I think you worded it best. We're just all
Yeah.
kind of casualties of what what it
Hmm.
was. But and
Right.
it's like I've always been open and welcome to having a closer bond with them.
Hmm.
It's just not been something that they haven't
Yeah.
said no. It's just they
Hmm.
just haven't. It's like their no has just come with just not connecting.
Right.
And so it's just one of those things that you kind of sometimes reflect on and say, I wish I did have,
Hmm.
because they have children, that are technically my daughter's,
Yeah.
cousins, and that she
Hmm.
doesn't know, you know.
Right.
Um, they have an uncle, that they don't
Hmm.
know about, or if
Yeah.
they know about, they've never met,
These kids
but
like,
I
where
was
these people
fortunate.
come from?
Right. But I was fortunate to have that experience with my
Right.
one sister that did connect because
Hmm.
she had children. So my niece and my nephew, always been very cool with them.
Hmm.
And they say, hey, Uncle Joe, and they're very
Yeah.
loving and all of that. And you just wish that bond was there. So I was just kind of curious because I know
Yeah.
it can go both ways in
Yeah.
situations like that. So it's
Um,
good to hear your side of it, to hear that that actually turned out to be a good thing, and you all are still connecting with each other. Even
we had to be in that space. I think that all of us had to kind of grow up some and realize, I think maybe after having kids, the importance of family.
hmm
Um, because I mean, I have a huge extended family on my dad's side, and I used to get angry, and sometimes I have to work on it now when they'll say, "Well, Aunt so and so," or and I'm like, I was
no,
two.
I don't know.
So no, I don't know, you know? And so I think that's the odd thing. Well, not odd, but what sets me apart from them in a way, because, you know, two of my other siblings grew up in the household with him. My two older sisters were old enough to have lived in the house with him and know and remember him. And I was a child that didn't. So when they say things, and I almost feel like, oh, should I even ask anything? Like I don't want to say feel afraid, but like it's not my place. Like I shouldn't ask questions. But you know, I had to have one of my uncles break some things down for me. I was like, well, how many siblings do you all have? What are their names? And they're like, oh, this person, this person, this person. Some have since passed away. Um, you know, I wish, because my grandfather on my dad's side did go to my graduation when I graduated from high school. And they told me, and I remember meeting him, seeing him there, and they were like, well, he had money for you when you graduated. He was waiting for you to pick it up. And I was like, how was I supposed to know that if
Right.
no one ever called me? No one ever told me that. And then he passed away like shortly after that. So when somebody tells you that, it like crushes you, because I'm like, well, you know, I, I didn't,
Mhm.
I didn't know. And he had a church in Fort Worth, and you know, I don't know where. Well, I don't want to say I don't know where our link to God or just our faithfulness in immersing ourselves in the Word, but I'd like to think that possibly that has something to do with it. Um, but you know, I think that at this point, it's important to move forward. And I'm like, well, you know, maybe they don't know it from my perspective, like I see it, because I would just want to say, hello, hello, you know, no,
Right.
I don't
Right.
know him. But one of my cousins on my dad's side, you know, told me a lot of stuff about him. Like I didn't know he was in the army, and I think she said he got best dressed in high school. And one of my cousins on my mom's side told me, she was like, you know what I remember? I think she said, like, I remember his laugh, you know, his smile. He had these dimples.
Mm.
And I was like, wow, you know, and I really appreciated that she told me, because when I tell you, no one in my family, like no one ever really spoke about him or his family. So, you know, it was, you know, good to have that information. And my uncle has, you know, offered to show me pictures and, you know, run down the history. I just need to get myself in gear and actually get out there and to learn more.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Life happens.
Right, right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good that you've been able to have that connection, and especially when you get to meet other people in the family, the
Hmm.
aunts and the uncles and things like that. I had a chance to meet a few of mine. It happened at when my dad passed,
Hmm.
and you're sitting around, get to that repast moment, and
Yeah.
and several of them didn't even know who I was, and then but they
Hmm.
were looking at me like
Yeah.
they thought they knew me, because of course my
Hmm.
dad and I look similar,
Hmm.
and so it was just interesting meeting them, meeting
Yeah.
aunts and uncles for the first time, and then they're, like you said,
Hmm.
sharing those stories, and
Right.
how, so it's a wonderful thing, and and then life happens the way it does. You
Hmm.
wish that there are certain things that you wish could have happened, and connections you could have made sooner, but as you stated, stuck in that, in the, oh, I wish this, I wish that, if only this, if
Hmm.
only that, because you kind of get drowned
Oh
into
yeah.
that, and
Hmm.
it just kind of make a difficult situation worse.
Right.
Sometimes you
It
need to say,
can.
okay, well, this is where we are now. Let's move forward. Hopefully we can have a connection, we can have a bond, we can have a relationship, and it's evident in your particular case.
Hmm.
You were able to formulate that, which is a great thing. So glad that you were able, in spite of how it began with dad's presence not really being around, how it
Right.
was able to you were able to manifest closer relationships that you might have thought would have never happened just because of how it started.
Right.
So that's
That's
that's a
true.
cool thing. So So Janae, when you are dealing with adversity,
Hmm.
we've talked about some heavy stuff, obviously, but
Uh-huh.
sometimes our storms are big. Sometimes it's just really minor, annoyance, less problems and challenges that we have to work through. I'm curious to know what is your process, if you will, that you like to follow, that works best for you when it comes to dealing with adversity and challenging moments. Like, how do you like to work through it, to work through such moments, that works best for you when you find yourself in
Hmm.
these type of situations? I'm curious to know.
I'm a processor, so I analyze, probably overanalyze things. Um, but one thing that I know, because it's just true, it happens whenever there is an issue, I always land on my feet. And I know that's because of God. I know that He's always going to be there to take care of me. So I really don't worry. Let me not say I don't worry. I do worry. But I always know that it's going to be okay. No matter what, I know it's going to be okay. Now, I am the type of person like, we're going to get this done. I don't really shy away from things. I don't run away from things. So I think that since I know that I'm in the palm of His hand,
Hmm.
um, that I know it's going to be okay. And one of the things, at church that we were talking about and what really stuck with me was this: it is your direction, not your intention, that determines your destination.
Mm.
And so that always speaks to me because that's true for me. You have to have your foundation in Christ, but I know where I'm going. There's no question on that. Um, but I think that some people, when I look at the world now, and something that I work with my kids is that you've got to learn how to persevere. You've got to learn that sometimes you got to fight, you know.
Hmm.
Um, you got to know what my mom used to say, you when to hold them and when to fold them too. So,
Right.
and I mean, that's all part of life. Um, when I was still doing like the 40 days of prayer at church, making sure that I have that alone time with God myself, to gather my thoughts. And I know some people have depression. You see every day, people committing suicide. Mental health is a huge issue. But to know you don't walk alone. And I think that's what I know to be true.
Mhm.
I may feel alone, but I know that I'm never walking alone. So, and with my son, when you talked about him and his faith, that came about with him having an autoimmune disorder that actually affects his eyes.
Mm.
And when you're sitting there and you're getting this news, and I'm immediately start crying because I'm like, well, I wish I'd noticed it earlier. What did I miss? And they were just like, there's nothing that you could have done. A lot of this was happening in the back of his eye. It just so happened to get so bad that you could see it, manifesting in the front of his eye. Um, and she was telling him one day when we go back for his follow-ups, because he's in remission now with that, but she's like, Joseph, you are just very lucky. You are just so, you're like, I'm just surprised that your vision hasn't been affected by this. And when she left the room, my son, he's like, you know what, Mom? And I said, what? He's like, it's not lucky. It was God.
Mm.
And I was like, you right about that. And hey, when you right, you're right. But I'm
Wow.
like, yeah, I said, you're absolutely right.
That's
Yeah.
beautiful. The fact that he understands that,
Hmm.
at that age, again, no luck in that. That
Yeah.
wasn't just by chance.
Hmm.
He spoke his truth, and I believe he meant that, and he embraces that. And to your point, And I think he models. I'm sure he models it. Models it off of your husband as well. But just
Mhm.
the fact that you said, the focus about the direction that you're going, not your intention.
Mhm.
That's so key. But even more than that, I love the fact that you highlighted the fact that I might feel alone, but I know I'm
Mhm.
not alone.
Mhm.
That is so huge. It doesn't, he for storms to come our way, he has to allow permission for that storm to come. But if he's
Right.
allowing for it to come, he's not allowing it to come because it's meant to destroy us, to take us
Mhm.
out. It's an opportunity to grow us, to develop us, to mature us, to nurture us in a way to get us towards one step closer to the purpose that we are to have in our lives, that he's predestined for us to have, as well as to bring a closeness between, us and him, to
Mhm.
to make sure that acknowledging the fact that we need to be dependent upon him, that
Right.
he is our power source. So it doesn't matter how difficult the challenge may be. It doesn't matter how, if the odds are stacked against us, of this being successful. If I have him in my life, if we're in relationship with one another, if he's on my team, then I'm not going to
Right.
lose, regardless of how long it might take, regardless of what I might face along the way, I'm going to be okay because I have him with me. We run into the problems when we do our solo acts, when we just try
Right.
to do life,
Mhm.
especially when it comes to the challenging, moments in time when we just decide, well, we think we know what's best,
Right.
and we just start winging
We
it,
don't. Yep.
and that's when we bump our head. That's when we get tripped up.
Mhm.
That's when we, make problems be, worse than what they needed to be.
Right.
And he's standing by patiently watching
Mhm.
us. Okay,
Waiting.
basically saying like, anytime you're done,
Mhm.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna
Yeah.
let you. I'm gonna let you go ahead and bump that head,
Mhm.
but when you're ready, and then I'm
Right.
gonna give you a
I'm
big old
here.
hug, and you ready to
Mhm.
follow me now? You ready to do it my way? Because you,
Right.
you do because like I tell people all the time. Last time I checked, he's undefeated when it comes to
Right. That is true.
to battling any obstacles, any challenges, any circumstances. Nothing is too big to turn over to him. So if you have that source available and you have an opportunity to be in relationship with him, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you? I can now feel comfortable even in my
Mhm.
most trying and difficult times. I can feel comfortable that everything is going to be all right, and that's
Right.
that's that's the essence of what you just expressed in your sharing about how you deal with adversity. Like, I worry, but I don't. Basically, you say I worry because you're human,
Mhm.
but you don't
Right.
stress out about it. I don't let
Mhm.
myself get all bent out of shape because in the end, I know
Mhm.
what the result is going to be. It's almost like it's a fixed game. I know
Right.
that I win and score, regardless of what the world thinks, regardless of what this person over here thinks or that person over there thinks. It doesn't matter. I know who I'm connected to, so I know it's going to be all right. I just have
Right.
to, as you said, you express to your children, and I do the same with my daughter. You just got to persevere. You got to
Mhm.
work your way through those difficult times, knowing that you're not in this alone.
Right.
Lean on him. Let him be your guiding path. Let him be your eyes, your ears, your cover of protection to get you through it. But rely upon him, not on yourself,
Mhm.
because you're only equipped to handle and do so much. That's
Right.
why when we hear about God doesn't put more on you than you can bear,
Mhm.
I believe that statement is made not because he's withholding, difficult things to come our way. Is because if you're in relationship with him, if you have a connection with him, then it doesn't matter how torrential that storm is, because you're gonna be
Right.
okay regardless. I mean,
Mhm.
you could literally be standing in the middle of a typhoon moment, and it
Right.
won't do anything to you. It may do a whole bunch all around you, but it won't take you out. It won't throw you on your back because you're connected to the source that's going to be able to navigate you through those difficult times. And so, such a powerful message that you just shared there, and I just love, obviously, with your son, and his maturity in that regard, and understanding about God's presence, and
Mhm.
and that it's not a luck thing, it's a God thing. So,
That's
and of
right.
course, it doesn't hurt that his name is Joseph either. So he's, so
You're right.
of course he would come up with something like that.
Yes,
Look, his
yes,
name
yes.
alone should say that. No. So,
Yeah.
Janae, if you had a chance to,
Mhm.
if you could speak to the younger Janae,
Mhm.
you reflect back on all your experiences, lessons learned, things that you've overcome, things that you've gone through in life, chance to talk to her, or perhaps a young lady that, is right now what the younger version of yourself used to be. If you could
Hmm.
offer up some encouraging words, some advisement as to what you think would be key things to keep in mind, key things to do to be able to face adversity, to be able to deal with overcoming challenging times in a healthy and a productive way. What would be that? What would be those words of encouragement or inspiration that you would have for the young or somebody like her?
I would say to my younger self, listen more than you speak and actively listen. And to really think before you speak, because I used to be very impulsive. Whatever came to my mind, I'm going to say it. So, I had to learn how to harness that, um, and that you're worthy, whether you feel you are or not. You are worthy. Sometimes, my sister-in-law will say this sometimes, the imposter syndrome, she has imposter syndrome. Sometimes I feel that too. Sometimes, like, I shouldn't be here, you know,
Hmm.
um, maybe other people are doing greater things. And, really, I'm probably not as high up there as they are. I haven't as accomplished as much, but know that you are worthy. There's nothing that you need to prove to anyone, to know that. You just gotta believe that, and never let anybody tell you that you can't do something. You can do anything. And I mean, when you hear that, I'm like, oh, that's so cliche when people say that. Everybody always says you can do, but you can. Um, when I say earlier that, I ran for city council and I didn't have enough sense to be fearful, that was true. I never thought about losing. I never thought about, well, what happens, if this doesn't go the way that I want it to. I feel that as long as you put your heart and soul into something, whether it turns out the way you want it to or not, the fact that you put yourself out there and you tried, that's what makes the difference. And you learn from your failures just as well as you learn from your successes in life. So it's all a tapestry. um, it's all, going to come together. And, for people that I think that suffer with mental illness or grief or just feel like they're having a hard time, like, don't feel like you have to go through that alone. Reach out to someone, say something to someone, um, because, you know, tomorrow's never promised to anyone, but you deserve to have your time on this earth and to make your mark.
Love that. Very, very well said. I mean, you like I said, you have to embrace your worth, your value. You can't let the naysayers get in your head, get in your ears, telling you
Hmm.
what you can't do, what you can't be. And again, it goes back to who are you connected to? What is
Right.
your relationship? And again, you have a relationship with God, nothing is impossible for you to do. People, there are going to be many people who won't understand it.
Hmm.
They'll see you. They may know what your background, your credentials are, what have you, and they'll be saying to themselves, "How did she pull that off?" You
Hmm.
know, But again, uh, I have to give all the credit to God because I wouldn't have been able to pull it off if I was again
Right.
flying solo doing my own thing.
Hmm.
But with Him, He's my power source. He's my strength. He's my will. He's my fight thing. So yeah, there's nothing that's too big, too great,
Hmm.
too far out of reach for me to accomplish. And so you just got to be willing to embrace that. And I love when you spoke about your mindset, with the city council, pursuit is like, just you had no fear. It was almost like you knew it wasn't a cockiness, it wasn't an arrogance. It
Hmm.
was just like
No,
This is what
I'm
has
doing
been
this.
placed on my heart to do, and this is what I'm
Right.
gonna do. Go down the way it needs to go down.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just what it is. And I don't care
Right.
what anybody said. They think I'm crazy because,
Mm-hmm.
everybody that's listening may not know. Let's just kind of put this out there. It's like everybody doesn't necessarily know where we live, but I'll
Right.
just say to our listening audience who doesn't know where we live, let's just say, if you were just looking at it from a visual standpoint, Jene is not supposed to be on city council in where we live. Let me just put it
Mm-hmm.
that way. She's supposed to be the last person that you would think would be on such a platform. But nevertheless, she's on that platform. She's well respected. She's well received. You can clearly tell that she's very well spoken. She brings to the table some knowledge, some insights, some intelligence, some integrity. So, but we also know that in certain situations that we people who look like us have been in, that even
Mm-hmm.
with having all of that, it didn't matter. And we still
Right.
didn't get the victory. But God saw fit that in this setting, in this perspective, that yes, she was going to get this victory, not just once, but she was going to get it a second time. And
Mm-hmm.
there's even other things that she hasn't even spoken to that she's connected with and involved with, game changing, impact making type of things that, we could be on here for more hours just talking about that. So, but that's just how God moves. When you're one of his, when you are connected to him, you're gonna put, lids
Anything's
and
possible.
limitations and barriers and on somebody. No, that's not how that
Mm-hmm.
works.
Right.
So and you're just living proof of what that looks like, in your accomplishments and everything, and just again the person that you are. So um, I appreciate those words of advisement, and I'm pretty sure people that are tuning in are going to be blessed by that, because if that's not something that they're currently embracing, I
Mm-hmm.
promise you embrace that connection with God as well. The sky's the limit as far as
Yes,
what you can
that
accomplish.
is
So
true.
that's awesome. That's awesome. So, Janae, it has been a pleasure having you on the
Well, thank
podcast this
you.
evening. I've thoroughly enjoyed, learning more about you and your story, and again, I know I know I've been blessed by it. I know others who are, going to be tuning in are going to be blessed by it as well. But as is customary here on the Blessings in the Streets podcast, before I let you go, we want to take an opportunity to acknowledge you, to celebrate you, to love on you. So, if you got anything exciting news going on, again, whether it's personal, business related, doesn't matter, that you can share with us, that please do, because again, we want to acknowledge that, we want to celebrate you, we want to end the podcast on a high note. So, what you got going on? Anything we need to know about that's
Well,
happening
let's
with you?
see. They have just appointed me for another term for the NCT 911 board. So excited about that. So learning a lot about our emergency communication systems and how that works. Um, let's see. Now, I do have my own business that I started, or my thoughts of a business. So I hope that within the next year or two, I can get that up and running. I'd enjoy that, having my own practice. Um, and then the rest of that is just to keep loving God, keep doing my studies with my Bible study group. In immersing myself more in the faith. That's what I wanted to do this year, and read my book, my Bible, from front to back this year.
That's awesome. That is awesome. And again, all of that can be celebrated, acknowledged. So I'm happy to hear the news. I'm looking forward to your business, making itself, a reality, and I trust and believe that that's exactly what's going to happen at the appointed moment in time, and it's going to be a great success. And and your extended involvement in with your new term, and all the things that you're learning with that. And of course, and I had the pleasure of being able to follow you on social media, and your kids are doing wonderful, whether it be academically and in sports. Beautiful marriage, just the epitome of a godly family doing it the right way. Are we
Hmm.
perfect? Or do we not go through stuff? Do we not have challenges? Of course we do.
Yes.
But again, it's who you're relying upon to be the head of it all that makes it all possible, even in those challenging times. So I thank you so much for sharing what you shared tonight. And as I said before, people are being blessed in the sharing of your story. I appreciate you doing so authentically and so transparently. It is definitely greatly appreciated. And for my audience, if you've enjoyed our content this evening, you've enjoyed Jene's story and just what we're doing here, please subscribe, please like, please share, please comment, because here at the Blessings in the Streets podcast, this is what it's all about. We want to inspire, we want to encourage, we want to uplift in the sharing of our stories with the hopes of helping others to be able to understand that, hey, you're going to go through storms. Nobody's immune from that, but Jesus, to not get stuck in that moment. Don't get stuck in that storm, but understand that there is a God that's out there that loves you unconditionally, that wants nothing but the best for you. He wants to be in relationship with you. He wants you to be dependent upon him so he can guide you through those challenging times and be a blessing to you in so many ways and equip you to be a blessing to other people, because that's the whole purpose that we're here to begin with, is to be of service to others, to advance God's kingdom, to be the best versions of ourselves, using all the gifts and the talents that God has blessed us uniquely. And Jene spoke about that earlier. Understand your worth. What that really means is not just the worth in terms of dollars and cents, but understand who you belong to. You are a child of God. You are sons and daughters of the King of all kings, and what better position to be in? And again, the possibilities are just unlimited as to how you can impact and change the world and make your mark for this time that we have been given to be here. So, with that, Blessings in the Streets podcast. This is the place where your story is your glory, where your relationships are relevant, and your journey is your joy. I am your host, Joseph B. Roberts. Thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, you keep fighting that good fight. You keep persevering. Face those challenges head on. Don't be intimidated by them. Don't be afraid by it, because we have a God that loves us. He wants nothing but the best for us, and he will get us through. No problem is too big for him. His record is unblemished. It is undefeated. You can count on him, and he will be your guiding light to get you through even the most difficult of times, because that's just how great and how awesome he is. So until next time, you take care of yourselves. I look forward to seeing you again. I appreciate you tuning in. See you later.